John Scott, Jonathan Acosta, Vic Carucci here. Bills. Unbelievable. I mean, there's probably a bunch of adjectives and ways to describe it that really would suffice or not suffice. I can't believe it. 41-40. They were down 15 with under 4 minutes to go. First time this team has come back from down 15 plus in the fourth quarter since 1967. Jonathan, you caught it all from field level. What was it like watching this thing unfold in the fourth?
I think that's probably the craziest game of football that I've ever covered in my life. And what was extra crazy was you felt like the Ravens were really dominating this game, especially on the ground, over 230 rushing yards in this game. But you kept looking up at the scoreboard and the time, and you're like, the Bills aren't really out of this. And then you really felt that when the Ravens and their rookie kicker missed that extra point, and you're like, hey, it's still a 15-point game. And then the Bills go and score a touchdown. Ed Oliver, and probably with the fumble on Derrick Henry. The Bills just never felt like they were out of this game. And maybe it's something about this stadium saying, hey, it's still got a little bit of magic left in its final season.
Yeah, no, well put, Jonathan. And doing the same thing in the press boxes, you had to, it took reminding of yourself or of each other when John and I were chatting about it between plays or during plays, that's still Josh Allen, the MVP down there. And are you ever really out of a game when he's the quarterback? Yeah, you could say it looked hopeless at times. We know after Derrick Henry's last touchdown run of the game, the long run, after the great Lamar Jackson run, it felt like everything was gone. The air had come out of the place, and the aisles in this stadium were filled with people exiting. So the feeling of defeat was clear, except in one place, the Buffalo Bills sideline. And when you heard after the game, Josh Allen and others talk about, we never blinked. I believe them. I mean, it's an easier thing to say after the win, but I believe that was the mentality, that they didn't feel like maybe a lot of us felt watching it, that they were out of anything.
I did tell Vic, I said, well, it is still a two-score game. He kind of rolled his eyes at me, and frankly, I was rolling my eyes myself. I was thinking, the game's getting closer, and it's like, imagine all the people that left this one, what they're going to think. And I just kept saying, well, they're going to think at the same result. You just stayed a little longer, and I was in bed a little earlier, and that fumble happened. It was truly remarkable how this thing all unfolded. And Vic and I were talking a lot in the post-game show. You tend not to, and I said it going in, you don't make too much of how this thing is going to unfold week one, but I think maybe you can in this instance.
I think we've reached a point with Josh Allen, and I felt this way a lot with some of the veteran quarterbacks of sort of the era prior, the Tom Brady, the Peyton Manning, the Drew Brees, that when they got the ball in a certain situation, you just felt like they were going to drive their team down the field and get the winning field goal, get the winning touchdown. I got that sense when the Ravens had the 4th and 3 and didn't go for it, and they punted the ball back to the Bills. The way that the fourth quarter had been going, you're just kind of like, the Bills are going to drive down and win this game. And I think it's that sort of confidence and what they all spoke about not blinking on the sideline. Josh Allen said it. Matt Prater said it. I think it goes back to the confidence that they have in Allen. And I don't know if this is him taking another step after an MVP caliber year, but I feel like he's just sort of reached this level of play where he has the full belief in his team, and it sort of comes through in a game like this. But it's also something, Vic, that I think can come through over the course of this season. And this team has said it, that if they take care of business the way that they feel like they can and want to, that this Ravens team is probably going to be a team that they see again. But how do you not have the psychological advantage over the past 2 times that you've been able to beat that Ravens team here at Highmark Stadium?
Right. It has to register in some way, shape, or form that you figure out a way to get it done against this team here. And again, you did it in the playoffs against them multiple times, and then you do it again against them here. And they were those kinds of games where things were falling apart. Go back to that playoff game last January. It was a lot of Raven mistakes that cost them dearly, as it cost them in this one. To blow that kind of lead, you have to do a lot of things wrong. The Bills did a lot right, and let's not take that away from them. But you heard Sean McDermott say it after the game, that you can't be short-sighted, and you need to be honest about how you played this entire game, which was bad in many respects. Don't forget that, because there are things that have to be addressed and be corrected. But to have that end result, to know that you got the one-up, the head-to-head. You got that win for a team that you could very well be competing and vying with for a seed spot and home field advantage in the playoffs, and that maybe the Ravens very likely end up coming back here in the postseason. We'll see how it all unfolds, and that's a long time from now. And then back to Josh Allen. What could top? I mean, the guy was an MVP last year. I voted for him accordingly on that panel and felt he deserved it. But Lamar Jackson was a close second. And tonight, as I'm watching it happen, I did say to myself, especially after what was it, John, a 75-plus yard movement for a 19-yard gain. I think that was the stat. And I said, watching that, and I started laughing, loudly in the press box. And I wasn't laughing at the Bills. It wasn't anything other than I couldn't believe what Lamar was doing. And then I had to say to myself, God, Josh Allen, too, great quarterback, but have I seen him do that kind of thing? Maybe he has. I don't think I've seen that, but we've seen a lot of unbelievable things. And then as the game unfolds and we see what it came down to was a lot of poise and a lot of just making those basic plays, I call them basic for him, to move the ball, get them in position to win it. And, yeah, it's still to process this whole thing is a lot.
I sometimes try to remind myself, this is different. This is special. He is different. He is special. Vic, you've covered slew of Hall of Fame caliber players beyond the quarterback position. For me, it's not. I haven't. And so a guy like Allen, to watch from where he was at 2018, and ascend to where he is right now, he makes the difficult look easy. These things, as insane as it was, have become even somewhat commonplace, amazingly enough. And I think it's good to just take a downbeat and reflect and just understand. And it's amazing, Bills fans, after 17 years of not making the playoffs and all the quarterbacks that you could rattle off and want to forget about after Jim Kelly, that you would maybe become accustomed to this. But a game and a night like this, I think, ascends you or pushes you to that place.
And you're right. And taking it for granted would be a huge mistake, even though it's easy because you see it so often. But it took me back, as you're commenting about what we see and over again from him, it brought me back to the greatness of Bruce Smith. That's the first name that came to mind, because a guy who could take a game over the way we see Josh Allen do it. Of course, Jim Kelly played, Hall of Fame caliber player. Thurman Thomas. Andre Reed. I witnessed all of that during that whole Super Bowl run, and at some point you just said, yeah, that's what they do. So some of that is happening with Allen, but I think I have to say, I'm putting Allen at yet even another level, because I don't know that there are other players in this league. I did say what I said about Lamar Jackson, and he's a great one, but I'm not sure where is Allen's company in the ability to pull off something like this. He had a lot of help in getting it done, but he did his part in the biggest of ways.
And you look at the final numbers on the stat sheet, 424 yards, 4 total touchdowns. And it's one thing to sort of look at what Allen has done over the body of his career with the Bills, but this is maybe possibly at the top. I think it was Opta who had this, the most improbable comeback of his career, down 15 with under 4 minutes to go, the 13th most improbable comeback this decade. So to put that in perspective, we're not just sitting here exaggerating things, because it's Josh Allen and everything he does is amazing. No, even by Josh Allen's incredibly lofty standards, this is right up there with one of the most impressive things he's done in his career.
I'm sure if we looked at that list, there's probably another Bills game on there for improbable comebacks. We're going to stay in the positive realm right now.
Stay in the moment.
Right now. Offensively, I want to stay also with some of the pass catchers, and mainly Keon Coleman. He's been widely talked about for what he didn't do as a rookie, for what he needed to do in his second season. It's one game, but I think this was just building off of a very strong training camp that the three of us had discussed over the past 6 weeks or so. And I'm not saying he's going to ascend into a bona fide number one wide receiver on this team. I still think philosophically you're not going to get there with one individual player. But I love the way he was attacking the football, and he was as critical of a pass catcher and someone that Allen was going to down the stretch to cruise this team to win.
To me, it reminded me of the stretch that we saw from Coleman right before his injury. The game we saw from him in Seattle, where he goes up and gets that touchdown in the end zone. The game he had against Tennessee, and you think, think back to the 50-plus yard gain. He was playing very good football before that injury, and I think this game took me back to that stretch he was playing in that moment. Like you said, he had a very strong training camp. I think a lot of it has to do with the chemistry developed with Allen, just a second offseason on task, and you see that sort of comfort level, especially juxtaposed with maybe the lack of chemistry that Allen had with one of his new receivers in Josh Palmer. You could see sort of the difference between that and then how much more comfortable he looked with Keon, and maybe even looking for Keon down the stretch in the fourth quarter, and Keon coming up with some incredible plays. I mean, they drew up one of the failed two-point conversion plays for Coleman in the end zone. They didn't get it, but it shows you the confidence that not just Allen, but this coaching staff has in Coleman as an ascending player in year 2.
And speaking of confidence, Coleman's confidence. I mean, what did this game do for that? It had to have a major impact, a major carryover. Again, I know Sean McDermott likes to remind us, it's a game-to-game thing, and, this carryover idea that a lot of us maybe media-wise talk about isn't always true. But I have to believe for Keon Coleman, how vital was it right off the bat to have that kind of game? After what we saw that looked like improvement, but look, this is the guy who got called out by his head coach, by his general manager in the offseason to do more. A guy who I think seemed to recognize that he had to do more, that he was more serious about the approach to things. And look, from year 1 to year 2, that is a big growth period for any player. And in his case, I think there was a realization, a serious conversation that he had with himself and that others had with him, that he needed to step it up. And the expectation for him is to be a guy who, if he's not truly a number one, at least try to fill that role as much as possible. This receiving core, again, for a good half or plus in this game, had issues getting open, and you wondered if we would be talking about have a whole different conversation about it. But Keon Coleman, I think, changed that narrative in a big, big way.
And let it be said, that what he did in this game, over 100 yards, had the incredible play for the touchdown catch on the pass that was tipped, didn't come against scrubs in the Baltimore secondary. It's a secondary that has Kyle Hamilton, that has Marlon Humphrey, that has Chidobe Awuzie. It's a very good secondary that the Ravens had. So I think that just adds to just how impressive this performance was from Coleman.
Josh Palmer coming on strong down the stretch with the comeback. I like some moments from Dalton Kincaid, including the touchdown pass as well. We'll have a conversation at a later date, because it is far too late right now, of the Curtis Samuel, what seems to be a healthy inactive, not really anything from Elijah Moore. And then again, as we'll continue to say with a lot of this, don't let the sensational comeback blind us or just put a blanket over a lot of the deficiencies we saw offensively. And now we really turn the page to defensively, because the reason that the Bills had to do this unbelievably unthinkable, improbable comeback is because Derrick Henry was doing whatever in the world he wanted to do for about 90 to 95% of the game, except for fumbling. That guy was a monster, and even though the grand total at the end of the game did not reach what he did in Sunday Night Football a year ago against his team, in my opinion, he was gashing them more impressively than he did in Baltimore last season.
I mean, you bring up that game. I thought it was literally deja vu. It looked like the exact same script where it's going to be a Derrick Henry runaway performance. Lamar Jackson kind of compliments him, and the Ravens offense runs away with the win in this one. Obviously, Josh Allen magic changed things, but defensively, that's exactly how it felt. And I think you leave this game impressed by what Ed Oliver did up front, and maybe we can touch more on him in a sec, but very concerned about what this defense looks like going forward and how much maturation they need in certain aspects. I'm still concerned about what that safety position looks like, where you maybe trust what you have in Taylor Rapp, but Cole Bishop still has a lot of growing to do in year 2. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is a tough quarterback to handle. You can't let the Ravens come in here and put up 40 points. The way this offense was going, you shouldn't have had to have this level of Josh Allen magic in order to pull off this win. So we talk about not making too much of week 1. Let's see what they look like when they go up against other offenses, because the Ravens offense is in the upper echelon of the NFL, one of the top 3 or 5 offenses in the NFL. So let's see what they look like against other teams, but still certainly not a performance that gives you any confidence in this defense going forward.
But I think it is important to say that they don't face Derrick Henry, they don't face Lamar Jackson for the rest of the regular season at least, and nothing on the schedule equates that. I mean, it's an important thing to note, and it goes back to what you also said. Let's see how they do in these other games, because are we going to just figure out it's a bad matchup for them? Football tends to be very proprietary. It's about matchups, and some teams just match up better against others or in certain ways. And clearly, we've seen far too much of Derrick Henry in wearing not just a Baltimore uniform, but a Tennessee uniform before that, match up poorly for the Bills defense. And I thought this game was actually more of an indictment of how they played defensively or didn't play well defensively than even the Week 4 game where Derrick Henry has 199 yards in the lopsided win that the Ravens had in Baltimore. I would hasten to add too that the youth of this team up front and in the back end is youth. That means they can get better. They can gain experience. It's not about, they're not going to start training camp in the season. You don't have that kind of fundamental work to do, but you definitely have mistakes to correct, learning to do from this. And I think that's the operative word you're going to hear a lot from Sean McDermott and others. Learn from what happened in this thing and don't have it glossed over just because it was this miraculous comeback.
Two veterans. I thought it was one of the best games I've ever seen Ed Oliver play. He was awesome, and it was beyond just the fumble at the end of the game. He was a monster and effective throughout. Joey Bosa, a new guy but still a veteran, was incredibly effective as well. Encouraging signs in that defensive front. But let's go to the secondary here. We'll start with safety, and then we'll go to cornerback. You mentioned Cole Bishop. It was a question all offseason. It was a question last season. I think time on task is what they're going to hope is the reason for maybe some of his issues right now. But in my opinion, I'm just curious how long the leash is, knowing also what the other options are currently on the roster to allow a kid to make mistakes while you're in a Super Bowl chase like they are this season.
For me, the vantage point I have is a little bit different from you guys, because you guys are in the press box. You guys get sort of that all-22 angle where you can really see sort of more of the intricacies of what happens with the defense. I'm just here on field level, and I remember watching one of the plays. It might have resulted in a touchdown where I see kind of Cole Bishop sort of blitz from the side of my eye, and then the from way back, and then the Ravens take it the other way for a touchdown. It's sort of those learning moments, right, where you think back to the game last year in Houston where he's forced into action. There's that long touchdown pass to Nico Collins. I think the concern, or maybe the benefit, depends how you look at it, is that I think the Bills sort of have to have a long leash with Cole Bishop because of the other options, right? You think about the youth at cornerback with Dorian Strong making his first start. Well, by the time the season ends, you hopefully have Max Hairston, you have Tre'Davious White, so you have other options, right? It's not just you're locked into Dorian Strong. With Cole Bishop, you sort of know what the ceiling is with Damar Hamlin, and he's sort of the other option they have. So really the Bills are in a situation where you kind of have to let it play out to really see what this guy can give you, because I think if it's a situation where you turn to Damar Hamlin, you're never really getting Cole Bishop back.
Yeah, and you were talking about how, as the season unfolds, how things can change with the health issues with Max Hairston, with the learning that some of the younger guys can do, and a couple of other things that are going to happen to this defensive front. Michael Hoyt's going to come back from a suspension after 6 games. Larry Ogunjobi is going to come back after a suspension from 6 games. That was a thought that was in my mind as I'm watching this, is that, okay, by the time you get at or near midseason, on the presumption that this team, given a schedule that I think gets a lot softer from here on out, has the opportunity to be very much in the hunt of things. They're currently in first place in the AFC East, for whatever that's worth. But from the standpoint of, okay, if you get these two guys back, whatever they're able to do, I would think fresh legs, Hoyt in particular, could make a difference. And you look at the game that Ed Oliver played, which was sensational. Really, on a bad night for the defense, he was making plays. He was there, and I saw a little bit from TJ Sanders that was impressive. So overall, I think there's more reason to, I say not blindly optimistic, but look at it as there is potential for this thing to get better before it could get any worse.
Let's just touch on cornerback real quick because Dorian Strong gets the start with Tre'Davious White not playing here. We'll continue to monitor what his status is. Didn't practice all week, so I'm even not too sure we'll see him against the Jets as well, especially an older guy. You're not going to want to try to force him there. Strong had a holding penalty early in the game. Beyond that, at least I didn't notice him look like he was out of place or struggling at all.
Yeah, no, I'm like I said, from the vantage point here, all I noticed really was Zay Flowers we talk about Derrick Henry running all over the place. Zay Flowers had himself a game too. So I think that just speaks to overall the secondary and sort of needing to get that shored up. And again, just an overall defensive performance where it wasn't just how they performed against the run, but in every facet of playing defense where Sean McDermott said it was not anywhere close to what he expected. I think sort of speaking to just the level of disappointment that he had with this defense and honestly with the defensive background that he has. Yeah. Maybe hits a little closer to home.
Yeah, no one really escapes especially from a secondary discussion. Christian Benford included had his moments. I'm not necessarily focusing singularly on the DeAndre Hopkins one-handed catch. That was a miraculous catch for a guy who was covered, but he does that. He's a Hall of Fame level type player, and he does, and they can do those kind of things. That said, there were other plays where he was struggling, and I thought, by and large, Todd Monken's scheme with Lamar Jackson, you doing a good job in after the snap of how the defense has to honor his potential movement and taking off, and in doing so, the positioning kind of gets even a step or two off, and then the separation. And Zay Flowers, what an amazing sudden athlete he is, right? He just pops into the open spaces, and there were open spaces. You talk about us having the all-22 view from above, Jonathan. As we were seeing it from there, it just seemed like acres of greenery around Flowers as he's making these plays and then run after catch.
Green acres. I see what you did there. I see what you did there. The guy is still sharp, even at, what is it, after 1:30 in the morning here as we do this, which means we're gonna wrap it on this. And I probably did him dirty because Matt Prater should not be the last thing we talked about because it's a heck of a story here. The guy was coaching 9 to 11-year-olds Little League just a mere days ago. Took a red-eye flight Thursday, lands in Buffalo 6-7 in the morning, goes straight to the facility, and here he is thrust into the spotlight and kicking a game-winning field goal here. Tyler Bass out 4 games at least on injured reserve here. A good debut for Prater, I'd say.
Yeah, and a good move by Brandon Beane and this staff to get in a veteran in this sort of situation. Matt Prater, a guy who's been in this league a long time, 41 years old. I think sort of speaking to that. It was fascinating just to hear him talk and all the different aspects that he touched on. Josh Allen said that he talked with Prater before the game, and that Prater came up to him and told him that he promised him he would give everything he had to give in this game, right? And so I think it's almost storybook, just sort of the magic of this stadium, but also the way that this happens for Prater in his team debut. He comes out and is perfect. I think 2 for 2 on extra points, 3 for 3 on field goals, exactly what this team needed. In a game where literally every single point mattered, he was exactly what the team needed him, and sort of as a veteran to come in and step up into a situation. That's exactly what Matt Prater did.
A few things. First of all, on a week 1 Sunday, where a lot of kickers were missing kicks. That was like one of the overarching themes of the day. Misses all over the place. Okay, so you had that in the back of your mind. And that's what I thought of as I'm seeing in the earlier games, those things. Oh, a guy just joining the team, up for a couple of days, red-eye flight Thursday, no sleep, and he's integrated into the system. And then a team that has its regular kicker, Tyler Bass, on injured reserve. Very I'm going to say it's infrequent that things work out well when this stuff happens. Now, I'm going to use an old-time term, and it's always called the Wally Pipp effect, right, with Lou Gehrig. Wally Pipp, if you're Wally Pipped, it means, you missed that one game, someone takes your place, you never come back again. Well, I don't know if that's going to be the case with Matt Prater taking over for Bass. We'll see. I'm sure a lot of Bills fans who felt shaky about the kicking situation, rightfully so, even before Bass's injury, based on what he did last year, are going to believe that, hey, the hero of this miraculous comeback should be the guy to stick around. I don't know how far that goes. 41 years old. There's a reason he was sitting out of football that long, and maybe his phone wasn't ringing. But, yeah, kudos to the Bills to figure out that he's the guy to bring in here. Obviously an accomplished player going into his 19th NFL season. That's all important. Experience does matter. But I would also add that his comments about not wanting to let these guys down when he comes into a situation, he felt it, right? What this team is about. And you got the MVP at quarterback. You got a team that's highly regarded, thought of as a Super Bowl kind of contender. He knew what he was walking into, and he knows this opportunity is pretty special. So whether it's just for 4 games or an entire season, Matt Prater was happy to be a part of this.
And the moment not too big for him, he said he was asked if this was the craziest game that he'd been a part of, and he said there's some pretty crazy games when he was in Denver with Tebow. So so he experienced Tebow mania, so he was prepared for a sort of moment like this.
Yeah. Number one, of course, you, the Florida guy, would jump at any opportunity to get a Tim Tebow reference. Also, that tells you how long Matt Prater's been in the league. How long that's
there were cell phones back then.
It was like 15 years ago when we were doing, Tebowing and all that stuff. All right, we're off the rails. It's 20 to 2 a.m. here at this point. Bills on the road next weekend at the Jets. So God willing, we will at least not be talking about the game this late at night. So with Vic Carucci, Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.